But hi, my name is Bri, pronouns are she, her, trans femme person based in Ohlone Land, Oakland, California, and I'm the senior community education program man. Oh my god, whatever. I do the education stuff here at Plume. I forget what my title even is, but I'm really excited to be bringing Ben Green on for this amazing resource mapping and resilience building workshop. For those who were here yesterday, or for those who weren't here yesterday, I had invited on the Transformations Project to do an event to kind of break down everything around the executive orders and policy measures and how they impact not just trans people, but just people in general. And it was pretty heavy. It felt like a lot of information, but it also felt a little bit empowering with the fact that it was being taught by other trans people too. And these people are just very, they're very empathetic. And I wanted to follow that up with something like resource mapping and resilience building, which Ben is going to be an amazing resource for that, because we need that. We need to be able to build our skills and build our tools to support each other. And yeah, and that's kind of what Ben is all about. And so I'm going to go ahead and actually let Ben do your introductions, but welcome to Plume's webinar.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Hi, everybody. My name is Ben Green. I use he, him pronouns. I am a trans man. I transitioned when I was a teenager about a decade ago, living in small town Connecticut. Now I am a community organizer, public speaker, and author living in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm doing transgender on hard mode. A lot of us are. We're not playing any competition here. And I am definitely out here on the front lines. So people assume that I would be a very dour, angry, jaded person. And the reality is I'm like a dog. I'm just the happiest person that I have ever met. And that's not because I'm naive. That's because that's a choice that I make every day. We'll talk a little bit about that. Obviously, a lot about that. That's the topic of the evening. So I do a lot of work in the advocacy world. I have given speeches all around the world to companies and government groups, NASA, Johnson & Johnson, the WWE, the people who make Hallmark movies, just talking to them about what it means to be trans and how they can show up as an ally. I wrote a book called My Child is Trans, Now What? A Joy-Centered Approach to Support. And I have a popular newsletter called Good Queer News that just talks about stories of hope and resilience and joy for trans and queer people that probably aren't making other headlines because good news doesn't sell papers. So I'm just really, really stoked to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Ben. And also just like your enthusiasm is very infectious. He's just telling me before everybody here got on that he came back from doing a trans inclusion talk with a zoo, which was like the most surprising thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, it was so fun. And I met a tree kangaroo and he gave me his business card. I will show it to you all because he's perfect. I've never heard of this animal before, but it's my favorite now. Here's his business card.
So beautiful. Yeah, so kind of with the context of this type of event, we're going to be talking about some heavy activating things similar to what we were doing yesterday in a different type of context. Like this is in a way of trying to build resources for ourselves and to empower ourselves to make more informed decisions and just like how to support each other. But also gonna be real, it's hard as fuck out here, and it's really stressful and anxiety inducing and scary with all of the executive orders, and just this just has been escalating for some time now. And so that those feelings are very much welcome here. If anybody is feeling difficult thoughts or feelings, I'm sure like none of you are alone in that. And so I just want to make that space and make that known that it's okay to feel those hard feelings. And if you want to like share some of those out here as we're kind of figuring out the resource mapping side of things, that's totally fine. But if you are looking for something with a little bit more tangible support, I will pass over Trans Lifeline. I had learned that the Trevor Project does do calls to the police without consent if you are experiencing ideation, but Trans Lifeline does not. So I'm going to send Trans Lifeline as the resource instead. They're really amazing. They have warm lines, which means you can text them, I think, and then you can have hotlines as well. So you can have a phone call with somebody. Kind of moving forward, we have live automated captions. If you have any questions, you can submit them in the chat, or you can put them in the Q&A box. And this last note actually isn't that important anymore because this is in our little, like, tidy, small, little, like, member exclusive space. And so there's no panelists and attendees. It's just all of us together. But the last thing I want to say is that this webinar is recorded, and it'll be provided as a resource for everybody. The recording, any kind of like websites or articles or pages, maybe like the slide deck, if that's something that you want to share as well. And I'll also be sending out a post-event survey. Those are really important to us, and that helps us know what people are looking for and what people want more of. So yeah, with that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Ben to start the talk. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for being here. And quick safety note I always love to make when we're doing a recording. If you want to change your like name on Zoom to be your first name, last initial, if you're somebody who likes to talk out loud on a webinar so that your full name isn't showing up on the recording, if that's something you're nervous about, having that extra layer of privacy sometimes brings people some extra comfort. So feel free to change your name on Zoom if you plan on talking out loud while the recording is going. And I think when we go into Q&A, we'll probably turn off that recording so everybody is a little more comfortable. Hi, I'm so glad to be with you all now that the housekeeping is all tidied up. This is going to be a really lovely evening, I hope. If everybody wants to send in the chat, kind of give me a 1 to 5 of how you're doing right now so I know what energy, 5 being like, I'm solid. I'm okay. I got my resources. I'm taking care of myself. And 1 being like, yeah, I'm in need of some pretty immediate support. I can't, by the way, like I'm not going to be able to immediately provide support to those who are in the 1 category, but it's helpful for me to know where everybody is coming in at so that I can bring that right level of energy to the resources that we talk about this evening. Resources and resilience building is so important to me for the wonderful people in this community. We all deserve support and tenderness, and we have this, good old American rugged individualism that says, okay, you have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do it alone, and leaning on people is a failure. And I don't agree with that at all. There is no medal you're going to get at the end of all this nonsense that says, and you did it extra hard for no reason at all. There are people who want to support you. There are resources that exist to lift you up. And I want to encourage and empower all of us to use those resources and to become resources for ourselves and for the people around us. Okay, we've got a lot in the 3 range. That's super legit. I'd say I go between a 3 and a 5, depending on the day, the weather, all of that great stuff. Can everyone see my slides okay? Okay, amazing. A little bit of my plan for this evening. I'm going to talk a little bit about the concept of resource mapping and what that means in a community organizing space and what that means just as a person and how we might do that. Then we're going to talk a little bit about fear-mongering because we talk about resilience, but I want to make sure we are all on the same page about what we're being resilient against, because there are certain things that we understand are threats, right? Trump presidency, a threat to our resilience. They would like us to not, like, they've got their own stuff that is very stressful for us. But there are a lot of things that are a little more subtle that are really challenging for a lot of us that we don't always have the tools or the space to admit how challenging they are. So we're going to talk a little bit about fear-mongering, and then we are going to talk about ways we can go to the resilience gym. Resilience and joy are not finish lines you will cross, states of nirvana that you will permanently achieve. They are muscles. They are practices. They are choices that we make every day. You're not just going to end up at resilience because you went through something really hard. We've got to choose to start finding ways to build a little bit of resilience for ourselves. So that's my plan. Plenty of time for Q&A. Please feel free to use the chat, whether it is to request that I slow down or speed up, to ask for clarification, to share a reaction, a quote, a resource. I am not the only expert on what it means to take care of ourselves right now. All of us become experts on what we need to stay alive and stay okay. So please feel free to share your expertise or experiences or questions in the chat as well. But I want to start by talking a little bit about resource mapping. This is something that I spend a tremendous amount of time doing, especially in the St. Louis and Missouri area. I'm the advocacy chair of my local PFLAG chapter. PFLAG is an organization for parents and families of LGBTQ people, largely of trans people. And so I get calls a lot. Okay, my kid just came out. What doctor can we go to? Who do we call for this? Can we get a passport changed? Can we get an ID changed? Where is a safe gym to go to? What schools are affirming? That's where resource mapping comes in. It is the practice of understanding who is available around you as a resource in a certain community, who is there to lift me up. And it helps us feel less alone, even if you're not in a position where you're regularly resource navigating for other people. Just knowing in my town, we've got 10 different organizations doing amazing work. I love knowing what the resource map is because it means that I don't feel like I have that whole weight on my shoulders, right? When we look out at the world, it feels like every single person, every group of people is being targeted right now. And we have this feeling of like, okay, I have to do something for all of them. That's a lot of people. And we are just individuals trying to pay our bills and nourish our bodies and stay alive. And that feeling of I have to save everyone is paralyzing, usually stops us from doing anything at all. So having an understanding of who are our local superheroes, I trust that this organization is doing an amazing job with, transgender housing discrimination in the city. So I don't have to do that. I can focus on what I'm good at. So being able to know that there are so many other people around us helps us feel less alone. So in general, when I'm going through and resource mapping, whether it's because I'm trying to become a better community organizer and I want to know what resources are around, or because I'm looking for help, I'm having a problem and I need support, I encourage everyone to take a bullseye approach to looking for resources. You want to start as local as possible, and then you'll slowly work your way outwards because, right, if we imagine that every resource that exists is a net that is there to catch you, they're all different safety nets. They all have roughly the same amount of string, and an organization like the Trevor Project or Trans Lifeline, it's a national organization, so they've got to spread that net really, really wide, right? That's like jumping into a soccer goal. The mesh on that net is very, very big because they've got to spread out really far. They don't know exactly what's going on in St. Louis, Missouri today. I'm not necessarily their hyper focus. So it's harder for them to catch me. A local organization may have smaller resources than somewhere like Trans Lifeline, but they're much more concentrated to the people in this area, so it's a much finer net. They're much more knowledgeable. They know, okay, you said you're struggling with housing in St. Louis. Call this initiative, avoid that shelter, but call these two. We just did a training for that one, so we know they're safe now. Here are places to go. So they can resource navigate for you. So when we're looking for help, the more local we can get, the better. So looking for our local, our metro area, our county, our state, and then up to our national. So for asking for help, this is the way to get some of the most effective support. It's also great when we're deciding where to donate, where to volunteer or get involved. The more locally you're getting involved, the more visible your impact is, right? One of my favorite things to do to volunteer locally is I do weeding in the Transgender Memorial Garden that our local trans community center built a few years ago. And that's right across from where I like to go and do yoga. So every time I go to yoga, I get to see, wow, look at this beautiful garden that remembers this community that I get to be a part of maintaining that. I get to see the difference of my work and I get to make friends. I go and I weed the garden with people I haven't met before. And now we're going to get coffee after. We're going to hang out. I have made so much of my community through organizing and volunteering and engaging with these local organizations where we all get to see the difference that we're making. So cannot recommend enough getting involved locally. Think globally, act locally. We borrow that term from the environmental justice movement of make sure we are aware of the problems in the entire world, right? Don't say, I can't worry about what's happening in another state because I'm focused on globally. We want to be really aware of the global systems that we're up against, and our actions, the things that we as individual people can do, are going to go the furthest in our own backyards, in our own communities. Okay, let's see. Any thoughts or questions? Yeah, think globally, work locally. It's one of my favorite concepts. I really love that. I'm going to switch gears now. We're going to go into a little more of our conversation about fear-mongering. But before we do, I want to pause and check in. Any questions about this concept of resource mapping, looking for support? Any thoughts, reactions, reflections before I keep moving along? Okay. Wonderful. So obviously, not everyone has a vested interest in our ability to be resilient as a community. Some of these individuals are obvious, others are less so. So let's start with the most obvious case, which is anti-trans politicians, right? They got it out for us bad. We know this. I want to talk about the concept of a messaging bill because I think we don't understand this quite enough, and I think it's so critical that we do. A messaging bill is a bill that is never meant to be passed into law, often without a passage. There is no intention to give a hearing, there is no intention to have a vote on it. They are just posing it to say, look at how brave I am. Look at me proposing this bill. They're used to politically posture or create fear. When we look at these organizations, things like the Trans Legislation Tracker, we see this graph that shows the really sharp spike in anti-trans bills, right? And this graph, in many ways, makes me sweat a little bit. Some people look at this and feel a significant amount of fear or stress. I look at it, and in many ways, I am seeing a story of fear-mongering and of triumph. So from 2021 to 2023, every year, even though we had an increase in the number, about 14% of proposed anti-trans bills passed. Last year, that went down to 7%. That's huge. That is a major, major victory built by our advocates learning better ways to fight these bills, getting through to people who were in the aisle or uncertain. We are starting to see more Republicans say, hey, this is starting to get too extreme. And I'm not saying, okay, we should go and forgive all Republicans for, a lot of their nonsense, but recognizing that our advocates are getting even better at their jobs. And these numbers aren't even including the wide range of bills that have been struck down by and blocked in courts. So I want to tell one other story of a messaging bill because I do a lot of advocacy in Missouri. I am at our state capitol every other week or once a week, depending on how bad a job I'm doing setting boundaries. And we have an understanding that in the state of Missouri, about 1% of proposed bills will pass in any given session, right? Last session, they passed like 8 bills total, not anti-trans. They're not that good at their jobs. Don't quote me on that publicly. So, they don't pass that many bills, but they proposed a ton of anti-trans legislation. And there was one bill in particular that was really, really egregious that was proposed about making it, you had to register as a sex offender if you supported a social transition of a minor. That bill got proposed and they got laughed out of the room. We immediately called our state advocacy organization, who called our senators on the inside, and they say, no, everybody thinks that is way too far. There's not going to be a hearing. Nobody respects the person who proposed it. We're not worried about that bill. That's not a threat here. And so conversation died down. We said, let's focus on our actual concerns, our actual strategy. But then the people who were not involved in policy work and advocacy found that bill when going through the list of bills proposed to say, okay, how bad is it this year? And they started posting on social media, oh my God, do I have to register? Do I need to leave? Am I at risk right now? This is horrifying. They started talking about it as if it had already passed, instead of saying there's a massive, arduous process in front of that bill. Then national news outlets started saying, we want to interview you about this horrifying bill and the impact it's having on your community. And all of a sudden, the conversation is getting big. And now we're starting to hear, hey, if we keep talking about this, they're going to give it a hearing because now there's energy. Now there's appetite. So we called those national news outlets and we said, you need to kill these stories because if you report on this like it's already happening, it will already happen. We need to let this bill die. And so we're fortunate that they did drop those stories and the bill did die. It was never at risk of passing in Missouri. If you go to the Trans Legislation Tracker for a year, that bill was on their homepage as an example of just how bad things are. Now, I get that it's so important for our cisgender peers to understand how bad things are, right? There are a lot of people who think it's not that bad, who it's important that they understand these are the depths that people are going to. And if we talk about every piece of proposed legislation as if it's already happening, we are going to feel horrified all the time. So we have to be able to identify where is a messaging bill coming from, a bill that is only meant to make us feel bad and not going to pass. There is not appetite. And that's why resource mapping is so important, right? Let your local advocacy organization and folks who are on the inside, on the front lines, tell you where the real threats are so you can spend your energy effectively fighting those instead of panicking about something that's not going to happen and freaking out about that bill so badly that you run out of energy and you can't go and testify against the actual threats of a bill because you've spent so much time being anxious. So trusting our resource map and the people, our state advocacy organizations who can tell us, okay, this is a threat, this is not a threat. They've got very good senses of that in those organizations. They are often incredibly well informed and well connected to people within the state houses. So we knew that people proposing these bills were trying to make us upset, right? This isn't a secret, but I want to pull back the curtain a little bit more. So who else has an interest in making us feel upset? I want to share a text message that I got right after the election from Occupy Democrats. It was PBS News heartbreak. More than 1 million voters switched to GOP, raising alarm for Democrats. I got this text and I was like, holy shit. That is bad, right? I read that and I started immediately freaking out. And what I do, because I'm aware of fear mongering, is I said, okay, I need to read more about that. I need to know, where are those voters? Who are those voters? How do we bring them back? What happened here? And so I'm looking and I can't find anything. So I keep scrolling. I can't find the article. Finally, I find the article, notably with a little detail that was left out of this text message. It was published in June 2022, 2.5 years earlier. It was texted to me as if it was a breaking news headline about the 2024 presidential election, and it was posted on PBS 2.5 years ago. So I said, okay, so Occupy Democrats and many of these national LGBTQ organizations are absolutely using fear-mongering to drive donations, to drive actions, right? There were a lot of us that really freaked out after the election because the campaign strategy of the Democrats was to say, if Trump gets elected, the world is going to end. He's going to destroy the country now. He's going to dismantle elections. Do I think he's bad? Do I think he's doing a lot of bad stuff? Yes. And it's moving very slowly. It's tied up in courts often, but we had this constant drone of fear-mongering to say, you have to vote because the world is going to end. You have to donate because the world is going to end. That wears on us psychologically to be constantly hearing about these things. So I saw this article and I was annoyed at Occupy Democrats that I said, okay, they're texting me an incredibly misleading headline in order to get me to donate. I understand what their goal is. I don't think they're trying to ruin my mental health, but that's what it's doing. And then I said, well, I still want to know about this article. I still want to read it. So I start scrolling to look for more information in this article. I read the whole article because headlines are often picked a little disingenuously. And sure enough, I find that the data that this article is going off of is that over a year, from 2021 to 2022, 1.7 million voters changed their party affiliation. So 2/3 of that group shifted to the Republican Party. About 1 million people became Republicans compared to 630,000 who became Democrats. Notably, almost all of those people were coming from third-party registrations or registrations who understood that there wasn't a viable third party at this time. So all of a sudden, we are now looking at around 300,000 person difference in 2022. This is very different than this, right? The number of layers of fear-mongering built into what was happening, to the way that PBS wrote their headline very upsettingly and alarmingly so that I would click on the article, and the way that Occupy Democrats used that headline to then say, oh my God, the sky is falling, the world is ending, donate today. There are a lot of layers of fear-mongering. And recognizing that news agencies, especially what we call legacy media, right? These big, long-standing media organizations. We're talking CNN, ABC, MSNBC, all of the people that you've heard of. It includes also Fox and all those, people, but even people who you are generally aligned with, their focus isn't news. They are a business first and a news agency second. So a study came out in 2023 that found that every negative word, each negative word in a headline drives statistically significantly more engagement with that article. The worse a headline is, the more money a news agency will make off that headline. The more they say drastic failure, sounding the alarm, all those words make people more likely to engage. They make more money. People leave more comments. They spend more time doom scrolling because they're frightened. So a lot of these legacy media outlets have a financial incentive to make you feel like shit, to make you feel afraid, to make you feel alone, to make you feel like the world is going to end right now. And yes, there are a lot of things that are bad, right? I'm not going to say they should be reporting that everything is fine. Everything is not fine. But the amount of bad news reporting, or you have to understand the worst case scenario, is actually already happening when it's not at all. That bill was proposed, and again, is a messaging bill, will never be heard, will never be implemented. It's so important that we learn how to identify when someone is just trying to make us upset. So there's somebody else we want to pull back the curtain again, which you might already be able to guess where I'm going with this. It's time we talk about social media. People talk about the For You page as if it is this wonderful friend that is trying to help you understand yourself and see content that you really like. Your social media algorithm is not a benevolent friend showing you the content you want to see the most. Your social media algorithm is a tool, a robot, meant to make sure you spend as much time on the app as possible. When you see a happy social media post that says, wow, people are getting along with each other, the world is safe, you say, okay, I feel okay enough to stop this doom scroll. Maybe I should go outside. Maybe I should go to an event and meet a new friend. I can be in public. I should call a friend. And you close the app. That is a worst case scenario. That algorithm has failed if you have closed the app. When they show you things that make you afraid, that help you feel numb, that make you angry, that make you rage comment and fight back and forth with somebody, you spend a lot of time watching advertisements, scrolling, going down the rabbit hole. So they win. That's a success. And this is a well-documented phenomenon that these companies are very, very aware of, that they're doing to make you feel bad. And social media, again, is a business. You are not the customer, you are the product. They are selling your attention to advertisers, and you are giving it to them. And the best way they can manufacture attention is by making you miserable. I understand that social media used to be a really wonderful platform for connecting with people, right? I was a queer kid in small town Connecticut. My only community was a Facebook group of queer kids across the whole state of Connecticut. It was amazing. It was my lifeline for so long. And it's been hard for me to reconcile the social media that I knew with the social media that I have. But so much of these apps are just meant now to convince you that they're still filling that same need, right? When was the last time you saw an Instagram post from someone that you followed on your For You page? That you actually saw an update on how your friend's kid is doing, or a picture of your friend's dog, not just random content of, 3 different overlays of baking and Family Guy and a Reddit story being told with a Minecraft guy jumping on blocks. They aren't what they used to be. There's a really wonderful book that I found to be very revolutionary for me called The Anxious Generation, or if you want one that's not youth focused, there's one called Stolen Focus that just talks a lot about how did we get here? What is social media intentionally, knowingly doing to our brains? Right? The number of high-level whistleblowers they have had, the number of times they have set up teams to investigate teen mental health and then fired the entire team after they report, hey, are you showing teenagers eating disorder content on purpose? And they said, yes, we are, and you're all fired. People have tried to blow the whistle to get them to stop. And even though recently things have gotten worse with Meta's new guidelines about removing any protections about anti-LGBTQ hate speech, there has been a long string of ethical declines starting really around 2015 when they let Cambridge Analytica do a dramatic amount of election influencing for the 2016 election. You should look that up if you want another horrifying rabbit hole to go down. I promise I'm now done with the part where I say, look at how bad everything is, and we're going to talk about mental health now. You don't have to quit social media entirely. You don't have to say, I am never going to touch a social media app again. Quitting anything cold turkey is very, very hard. it's possible that the theme of the rest of this evening is going to be intentionality. We are making active choices rather than just saying, this app chooses how and when I use it, right? A notification is a strategic tool to get you to open the app. So the big thing for me that I like to do is disabling notifications from social media and news app. I do not get news alerts. I check the news and I check social media on my terms. I check the news at 11 and at 3. Other than that, I don't check the news. If something really urgent that needs my attention happens, most likely someone is going to tell me about it. If you don't believe that, some people say, well, how could I do that? What if I don't know about something, right? Aren't things going to get worse? What if I need to know that for my job? 2 weeks. Take 2 weeks. Turn off your news notifications. No more infotainment. Don't put news on in the background. Just say, I pick 2 times a day that I check the news. Ideally, not when you're in the bed or close to sleeping time, because that's awesome for your sleep hygiene. And if anything bad happens, if you miss a news alert that you could have responded to and it would have changed the outcome, okay, turn those notifications. Sounds like you've got a really hard job. Most of us don't have a job where we need to know immediately. And if it's something really big, you're going to find out. Someone's going to tell you, someone's going to text you, or you'll find out when you check the news at 3. So try setting those boundaries and being able to identify, okay, this headline is clearly meant to frighten me. What are the actual facts? My approach to reading a news article is get in, get out, get to work. I want to read as efficiently as I can to find out what are the actual impacts of this, what are the concerns, and what can I do about it? What do I need to do right now? Maybe it's nothing. And then I say, okay, so I'm done reading this article now. I'm as informed as I need to be. And when it comes to bringing that intentionality to our social media use, consider a social media audit of seeing if your social media app is actually giving you what you think it is, right? When somebody says you should quit social media, we have this, but I need it for work, but I need it for connection, I need it for these things. So check if you're actually getting those benefits. Are you actually getting those things? Anytime I am about to open a social media app, I pause and I ask myself, what am I looking for right now? Is this a habit that I'm just clicking it to satisfy a craving? Is it I'm looking for connection? Am I looking for mental quiet, right? I want to feel like I can dissociate out of my brain. It's a big thing. A lot of us use social media as a healthier alternative to dissociate. That's not healthy. That's not good for us, sweet friends. We don't want to dissociate. So, what am I looking for? And then asking ourselves, do I know that I'm going to get that thing and at what cost? Right? So let's say I know that I'm going on social media because I just need to laugh. I need to see something funny, and I know I follow lots of funny people on there. How long does it take for me to see a funny video that I can remember for more than 5 seconds, right? If I scroll away and immediately forget it, probably a sign to turn that off. And at what cost? I have to spend 40 minutes scrolling through political updates that I really was not trying to be involved in news right now. Am I getting this? And then asking ourselves, is there a more direct route to get that thing? So maybe here are the 5 funniest people on Instagram that I follow. I'm going to open the Instagram app. I'm going to go to their page. I'm going to watch their 10 most recent reels, and then I'm going to close it. Or I know that I'm looking for connection or meaning. So instead of trying to find something that makes my day feel meaningful on Instagram, maybe I'm going to spend some time at a community center. Maybe I'm going to call up a friend and get connection directly because I'm probably not going to see their life updates on my For You page because that's not how that algorithm goes anymore. And there's a really wonderful book called Digital Minimalism. It's about this idea of how can we step back from social media in a way that feels intentional and says, I am now getting what I want out of social media rather than just letting them get what they want out of me. So I know I just threw a lot at you. I know that there was a lot of heavy stuff in here. I'm going to do a pause and check in. How are we all feeling? What questions, thoughts, reactions are on everybody's minds before we go into a little bit more about resilient strategies?
Some folks adding some things into the chat. Mike saying people trying to make me accept. You're so right about doom scrolling. Octavia saying this is really good information to be aware of, though I feel a little better now that I understand how all this works.
Yeah,
Totally.
absolutely. And Kat, I definitely hear you. The more I started posting about politics, I was on TikTok for a while. I had a big following as, hey, TikTok, I'm your trans older brother. And I had a lot of fun. And then I started going to the state capitol. And all of a sudden, I would post, and my videos were getting shown to no one. I had 35,000 followers, and they'd get 200 views on them. And all the videos I was being shown were like anti-trans aggressive people because they knew that I cared about politics and that that was going to fire me up and get me to stay on there once I started being very transgender on that app. It is definitely not just Meta where the problem is. So I definitely hear that. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more now about building resilience. And I know I mentioned earlier that I really want us to think of resilience as a muscle. And so what I don't want you to view the next segment of the presentation of is me giving you a workout plan, right? When we're using that muscle analogy. This would be like going to the gym and then having a personal trainer say, okay, I'd like you to do every exercise every day and go, right? That's a 4 hour a day minimum workout plan that you're not going to do and you're going to hurt yourself. You're not going to sustain that energy. I want you to view this as me giving you a tour of the gym. I am showing you a toolkit, not a blueprint. So I want you to listen to all these ideas, not to say, Ben's telling me to do all these things. And all of a sudden, my self-care routine requires all this money and 9 hours a day. I have a job and a life, Ben. I want you to listen to this strategies, and I want you to pick one, pick two. Just pick a couple of little things and build a habit you can stick with, and then add additional things as we go. What's important is not that you do resilience perfectly. What's important is that you do it at all. So I'm going to start by being annoying. I know that it's annoying. There's no cheat code to feeling okay sometimes. There's a reason that there are certain things are recommended so often by so many people, by so many studies. It's okay to feel skeptical. It's okay to say, Ben, you are giving corporate wellness blog and I need you to stop. But it's so crucial for us to understand that things like vitamin D deficiency, most people are vitamin D deficient, and the biggest symptoms are fatigue, back pain, and depression. Yeah, you might be going through some stuff, and you're probably vitamin D deficient. It's winter. Most people are vitamin D deficient. It's a miracle what a vitamin D supplement will do for you. I'm not saying it's going to fix your depression, right? I'm not being a corporate wellness blog and saying, I'm going to give you all these strategies to forget about the big bad world so you can be a productive employee at your job. But these little things, mindfulness, gratitude, spending time in nature, having a good sleep hygiene practice and moving our bodies regularly. It's so annoying when people tell us that these are good things to do. To be some cheat code of actually, well, if I can just think about something differently, then I'll feel better. Yes, in the long term, the goal is to build a world that does not make us depressed. That's the best antidepressant. And in the right here, right now, you are a human being, and I have a vested interest in seeing you learn how to be happy. You deserve to be happy. It's going to take a minute to rebuild a world, to build systems that support our joy. We don't have to martyr ourselves the whole way there. It's okay to say, yeah, Ben is giving corporate wellness blog by saying spend 10 minutes a day outside looking at trees without your phone. And there's like a million research studies that talk about how much that helps. There's something to that, right? This is long-term historical wisdom. Things that we have known for centuries are good for us to be with animals, to be with people we love, to think every day for a few minutes about what makes me happy? Who am I grateful for? What are the things? What is my intention for the day? So there's not going to be a cheat code to just saying, if you do this secret, up, up, down, left, A, B, X, everything is going to feel better. We just have to try things. So why bother? What if they're not helping? What if I've tried going for a walk and I've tried making my bed? I want to share a quote from one of my favorite songs that I think is just really, really beautiful. I want to point out that it's an incredibly inappropriate song, and I don't want you to hear the name and be like, I'm a third grade teacher. I want to play Good Morning Sunshine for my class. Please don't. It's incredibly inappropriate, but it's so beautiful. And the quote is, here's the thing. No one ever got happier sitting around waiting to get happier. Every day we wake up and we get out of bed, We get dressed and we clean up last night's mess, and we keep doing these things not because they're guaranteed to make us feel good, but because failing to do them is guaranteed to make us feel bad, right? I can't promise that taking a vitamin D supplement or petting dogs at an animal shelter or spending some time looking at a tree or a picture of a tree, I can't promise those things are going to help, but I can promise that doing none of them is going to make you feel worse. So, okay, I'm done with the annoying part of resilience, and now I'm going to talk about like cool creative stuff. It might feel like a new way of thinking about things. Yeah, bad air quality inside your house, breathing fresh air, being rooted in the earth. There's a reason we say touch grass. It's really nice to touch grass. It can be really helpful sometimes. I love touching grass. Okay, so I want to talk about this concept that I created, I created, but it is very heavily derived and inspired by the concept of spoon theory, which was created by disability justice advocates to say, hey, we all have a limited number of spoons that we're holding, and every action requires a certain number of spoons. And people who are disabled have less spoons, or have actions that might take somebody who is non-disabled 1 spoon and would take a disabled person 7 spoons. And now they need to lay down because they went for a walk, and that took up all the spoons they have. So spoon theory is an amazing way to start to think about this concept of limited energy. But I wanted to develop it a little bit further for myself because I found that I was getting really exhausted when I got into full-time public speaking and advocacy, and it was very different flavors of exhaustion. So I started to think about myself as having multiple different batteries. For me, with the way I live my life, I have my physical battery and my social battery. These ones we've all kind of heard of before, right? Am I tired? Do I need to be alone? And then for me, I have my teacher battery and my trans battery. So my teacher battery is how much time I spend educating, giving presentations. And my trans battery is how much time I spend justifying my existence or around cisgender people who are doing cisgender shenanigans. This is a safe space. We all know what that's like. So different things drain and recharge my different batteries. And so spending some time reflecting or journaling or talking it through with a friend or a therapist, what are your batteries? What drains your batteries? And what are your quick charges, right? So my teacher battery, for example, that gets low. And I've had a lot of presentations this week. I knew I was traveling. I had an early flight this morning back to St. Louis. So I needed a quick charge, which for me was to say, okay, I'm going to stop working a little early because I know I'm working tonight. I'm going to read my book, which is a trans fantasy book, and I'm going to go for a walk with my wife and my dog, and I'm not going to answer any questions. So that's a quick charge. And my long charges are saying, giving a lot of presentations this week. So this weekend, I'm going to spend time with my friends and establish a no question zone and tell them I am not teaching this weekend. Sometimes things can drain one and recharge another, right? Spending an evening around people who are in the trans community who are going through a lot of the same stuff I am, this refills my trans battery in a really beautiful and important way. It's filling up one battery while simultaneously saying, I'm here teaching. So it's decreasing my teacher battery. So there's not a moral judgment attached to an action taking up a battery. Everything costs energy. That's a neutral fact. And how can you look at the week you have ahead and map out your plans so you're not hitting empty? So somebody asked if I would give a presentation earlier today, and I said, nope, I already know I'm going to be tired that day. I don't want to get all the way to empty. I want my battery to get to 20%, and then I could take a nap and be fine. It's much harder to come back from all the way dead battery than it is from low battery. So how can you map out your week and know what those kind of warning signs are that, hey, my battery might be empty soon, rather than just saying, I'll know it's empty when I'm crashing. It's 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, and now I just kind of have to struggle through this week. Where are the places where you can set those boundaries or build in some of those charges into your day? I also want to point out that you are the director in your own life. You get to decide what story you tell yourself about the life you're living and how big a role you let people who want to hurt you and erase you, how big a role do they play in your story, in the movie that you're making of your own life? Sometimes, and this is going to be a little bit of tough love for a lot of us as a community, we can get caught up in this little bit of a victim mindset of I am really, really focused on the ways that Donald Trump is telling my story right now. I refuse to let him tell my story. I refuse to let him be the main character, to define my whole day, all my stresses, to let him live rent-free in my head. I'm the director, and I don't want that to be a part of my story. Now, there are a lot of privileges that come with that, and there are certain things that I can't write out of my story. But you get to decide where you want to point the camera and how you want to interpret things, right? If you decide, okay, today is going to be a bad day, right? I gave a presentation in the middle of nowhere, New York, and I was driving. It was about a 2.5 hour drive from the airport to the place I was giving a presentation. And I said, God, I'm going to be driving through such a conservative area. I bet it's going to be awful. Sure enough, I start noticing Confederate flags. And I was like, man, this is terrible. Like, how many Confederate flags do I think I'm going to see on this drive? So I start counting them. I'm at 5, I'm at 7, I'm at 10, and I'm having a horrible day, which I knew that I was going to have. And then I drove past a house with a pride flag. And I was like, whoa, wasn't expecting to see that here. That's cool. I wonder how many pride flags I'm going to see. And I'm going to stop counting Confederate flags. So I started looking for pride flags, and I found ones that I hadn't noticed, right? A little sticker on somebody's bumper, and something that was inside of somebody's house, or a faded pride flag on somebody's porch. And I started counting and noticing and looking for those pride flags. Now, a key point to take away from this is that both flags existed the whole drive. The Confederate flags didn't stop being hung up because I stopped looking for them. They were there. And that's a reality of the day that I had. And I didn't make those my story. I said, I'm going to look for pride flags, and that's what I'm going to focus on. I'm not going to pretend there weren't Confederate flags, but if somebody says, how was your day? And I say, I could either say, it was horrible, I saw 12 Confederate flags, or I can say, it was awesome. I saw 15 pride flags that I was not expecting to see in such a rural area. So confirmation bias is really, really present. If you decide that you are a victim, if you decide that people hate you, that everyone is cruel, and that people are out to get you, you will find evidence of that everywhere you go. I gotta tell you, I have decided that people are kind. I have decided that people ask questions because they want to learn. I have decided that people usually just make mistakes because they're a human with their own trauma backed into their own corner, and they're not trying to be actively malicious towards me when I'm out in the normal world. And I find evidence of that all the time. You are the director in your own life. Where do you want to point the camera? It's also really important for us to develop high quality hobbies, to have things that we like to do. Some of the categories that I like to think about are restful hobbies, hobbies that help us restore our energy. And if it's something like watching TV or comfort shows or movies, try learning how to pick one screen at a time. Rather than saying, I'm going to watch TV and have my computer open with my email there and be scrolling on my phone, do you actually feel more rested when you do that, or do you just feel numb? So making sure that rest is actually recharging those batteries. Movement hobbies that help us feel, active in our bodies. I started doing aerial silks class because to be cringe is to be free. I'm having an amazing time learning the Rebecca splits. So what helps you get active and moving in your body in a way that feels fun? What hobbies help you grow as a person, right? I love to read nonfiction books about community organizing. Right now I'm reading everything Adrienne Marie Brown has ever written because she's a brilliant advocate talking about how we can use love and joy to relate to each other, to move forward. And I do tarot every day to meditate and say, what is the intention I'm going to set for today? And then hobbies that help us make friends. I love board games. I love volunteering with my local PFLAG chapter. I love connecting with other people through my hobbies, playing pickleball with a whole bunch of random old people. I'm meeting people around me so that I'm not feeling alone. And please feel free to put in your chat your favorite things that help you. What are your favorite high quality hobbies that actually help you feel rested or happy or excited? What is bringing you joy in your life, and how can you choose to lean into that? And then the last thing that I want to share here, the most important question when it comes to resilience, especially for trans and queer people. I cannot emphasize enough how important this question is. What do you want? When you think about the world that you want to build, what are you moving towards? We spend a lot of time playing on defense, saying I'm always trying to survive what these people are throwing at me. I don't want any more of Trump. I don't want any more of these bills. And I don't want us to do that, to just spend our time stuck in the mud that they are creating or saying, okay, whatever I want is the opposite of what they want. I refuse to let those who seek to erase me define the shape of my dreams. Their imagination is far too limited for my liking. One of the things that keeps me sane, that keeps me strong more than anything else, is understanding that I'm in this fight. And I do think of it as a fight, as a battle. I am not in this fight against something. I am fighting towards something. I am fighting for something. And I know that I am marching unstoppably towards a better world that I am working to build every single day. That feels much better for me, much more nourishing, much more motivating than just constantly feeling like, what do I want? I want to stay alive. I want no more of that. I want to be done with this part. Yes, I want no more Trump. Yes, I want no more trans healthcare bans. And we can dream bigger than that. That's what's carried our community through centuries of people trying to wipe us out, is knowing that a better world is out there. And that allows us to celebrate our victories rather than saying, okay, it is constantly, there's further to go. I can't celebrate yet at the finish line, right? Knowing what you want, setting goals that are both big dreams, and I want my city to have municipal ID laws as a way to help people change their gender marker if it's not illegal in our state. I want Trans Day of Visibility recognized by the city. I want to have a Trans Day of Visibility celebration that has 100 people at it and that breaks last year's record of 20 people. I want to have a Pride Festival where I see trans kids smiling and happy and meeting trans adults. I want to be able to express myself and know that no matter how I dress, people will use my pronouns. And I know I'm walking towards that. Trump is a nuisance. He's a problem and I hate him. And I'm walking towards something. My dreams do not take the shape of Trump Waluigi. They are something entirely different. So that's a big thing I want to leave you all with, is to spend some time dreaming about the world you want to build and walking towards that. Thinking about our social media intake, our news intake, giving ourselves permission to know less, to do more. Staying informed is a trap that is going to help us just feel constantly like I have to know everything bad that's happening so I can care about these groups of people. If you are infinitely informed, we're likely to get stuck and paralyzed and feel like there's nothing I can do. There is so much you can do. Stay alive. Keep choosing joy. Decide what you want to walk towards. Decide what you want. Move towards that. Look for the people in your area. Think globally, act locally. Find the people around you who are walking towards that world with you. Link arms, skip along the way, walk slowly, wear comfortable shoes. We will get there. We got to take care of ourselves and keep moving that way. But I know we will get there. I know the world feels scary. I do. I get it. And I got to tell you, the amount of news stories I read, social media posts I read that make it seem like everybody is hateful and angry, here's what I haven't heard on the news. I spend almost every week with a different PFLAG chapter around the country. I do free presentations for PFLAG chapters. I've done about 125, and I keep in regular contact with all of them to know, hey, what's going on? How are things going so far? Every single chapter I've spoken to since the election says, Ben, we have more volunteers than we have ever had in our history. Our meeting sizes are doubled. We need new rooms. We need new spaces. People are activated in standing up for this community in ways that we have not ever seen before. The volume of people everywhere in this country, in tiny towns and dark red states and rural areas and farming communities, everywhere I go, there are profoundly compassionate people who might not use the perfect vocabulary, but are passionate about building a better world for their trans loved ones, or just because it's the right thing to do. People of faith, farmers, old people, grandparents, people who weren't supportive 5 years ago, weren't supportive 2 years ago. There are so many people who care. We got to get out there and meet them to understand we are not alone. So that's all that I have for you this evening. I'm going to go into our conversation now and open the floor to any and all questions you have. I've got, again, the book that there will be a discount code shared with you after the presentation, as well as a newsletter called Good Queer News. There is a free tier and a paid tier with different kinds of writing in there, but I talk a lot about resilience and hope, how we take care of each other and how we stay sane. So thank you all for being here. This has been lovely. I hope this has brought you some level of peace or joy or just the understanding that there is a better way to walk forward towards something. So thank you all. Thank you for having me, Rye. This was really fun.
Yes, thank you so much, Ben, for just like everything. This is really amazing. I really was resonating with so many of the different resources you're talking about, like the like knowing less and doing more, and just like the hygiene of social media is always so difficult, like the numbing and dissociation, and but you're like seeking something, you know. I
Yeah.
really appreciate all of that. I'm actually gonna pause the recording so that
Oh,
like if folks have not been feeling comfortable being on camera or like speaking out loud, that's totally fine.